me like they want us to be afraid, man. Maybe we just like being afraid. Maybe we just so used to it at this point that it's just a part of us, part of our culture. Security alert on orange. It's been on orange since '01, G. I mean, what's up, man? Can a brother get yellow, man? Just for like 2 months or something? Goddamn. Sick of that.
So much. What a Super Tuesday. You know, all across our country today, Democrats voted to break down barriers so we can all rise together. And I am so delighted to be here with you in Florida. I congratulate Senator Sanders on his strong showing and campaigning, and I'm grateful to all of you who voted for me, to the volunteers and organizers. I know you've worked your hearts out.
So, we had Super Tuesday come and go now. And it seems pretty apparent that this is going to be a race between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. This is Hillary Clinton's speech for her victory after we saw the results of the votes from Super Tuesday. There is absolutely, in my opinion, no denying that this may very well be the most interesting presidential race in the history of this nation. It could very well end up being the most interesting presidential race that we may ever have. There's a pretty big investigation going on for Hillary Clinton with these emails. And we won't even talk about her involvement in the loss of lives of Americans in Benghazi. So there's a pretty big investigation going on for this woman who is running for president. Then on the other hand, we've got Donald Trump just absolutely destroying everybody for the most part. Ben Carson has now dropped out of the race. It's still, I guess, a three-man race, and it seems that even Rubio is definitely done. Cruz still seems to have half a chance, but he's been involved in scandal after scandal through this whole thing and doing every dirty, despicable thing you can possibly imagine to try to get votes. The fact that he would call mass amounts of people and tell him that Bernie Sanders dropped out of the race when he really didn't in order to win a state is possibly the craziest election scandal ripoff that I've ever heard. And it seems that no matter what Donald Trump says, and he says some pretty out there stuff, he just keeps getting more and more people behind him. Now let's keep in mind, he's been trying to tell the American people the truth about what's going on for a long time. He called out 9/11, right? He called out Obama on his birth certificate. You know, I believe that if there's one thing in this country that, 70-80% of the population at least can all agree on, it's that 90% of our politicians are a bunch of liars. And I just find it interesting a person who is very, very brash in telling people the dumbed down truth about what's going on in this world is running against a woman who could very well be in prison very soon. So there's couple of little situations or a couple of details pertaining to this whole thing that I want you guys to think about. There may be a clip or two from a video that I've posted before, but I'm just gonna piece a couple of things here together and just give y'all something to think about. So while we're doing that, let's take a look at this real quick.
I'll tell you what kills me. Hillary Clinton might run. She might run. That blows my mind. I mean, she became a senator. She went from being the president's wife to being a senator. Just like that. Lateral move. That's like Tom Brady's wife becoming the next quarterback of the Rams. It's like, what, you hanging out? You just pick it up? I sucked at sports, and then I banged Tom Brady, and I don't know what happened. I just picked up the ball. I started lacing it. I'm leading receivers. It was incredible.
So isn't that interesting? I mean, does anyone ever, any of these people voting for this woman, actually ever thought about that? Because what he said was pretty funny, but he's actually got a lot of truth there. Because if she went from being the president's wife to being a senator, I don't recall how many times this was happened, if at all. Right? I don't remember anything like this happening before. And it seems to me that she went from being the president's wife to being a senator. And it seems like all she's been able to do is get herself involved in scandal after scandal after scandal. Now, she hasn't been found guilty of anything yet, at least by law enforcement agencies. But anybody who actually takes the time to study the facts can see that there's plenty of documentation out there that shows that this woman has already created or already been a part of quite a bit of illegal activity that should not be going on by somebody who should be one of our elected officials, much less president. Okay? It's one thing if you want to vote for Bernie Sanders. Now, personally, I'm not a fan of Bernie Sanders. I'm not a fan of socialism. There's plenty of countries that already have socialism, and people already have the ability to move to those countries. Okay? And I find it interesting, as I've shown in some of these statistics in my other videos, about how there's all these millennials that support socialism and can't even define it. Let's go over here and look at those statistics.
And this talks about how millennials don't know what socialism means. And I found this interesting considering we have a lot of current, or let's say our current president and our current future presidential candidates. A lot of them are in favor of a lot of socialism ideas. And millennials don't seem to know what that means, according to this report. Young people don't know what socialism is. recent polls have suggested that millennials are far more positive to socialism than older cohorts. For instance, the Pew Research Center found that 43% of 18 to 29-year-olds had a positive reaction to the word socialism, compared to 33% of the 30 to 49-year-olds, 23% of 50 to 64-year-olds, and 14% of 65 plus. The older you get, the more you hate socialism. But do young people even know what socialism means? Perhaps not. A new Reason Group report on millennials finds that young people are more favorable to the word socialism than a government-managed economy, even though the latter is less interventionist. Millennials don't like government intervention in the economy when you spell it out precisely, rather than use vague terms like socialism. In fact, a 2010 CBS New York Times survey found that when Americans were asked to use their own words to define the word socialism, millennials were the least able to do so. According to the survey, only 16% of millennials could define socialism as government ownership or some variation thereof. In contrast, 30% of Americans over 30 could do the same, and 57% of Tea Partiers incidentally. Millennials simply don't know that socialism means the government owning everybody's businesses. They don't understand that socialism means the government owns the banks, the car companies, Uber, Apple, Facebook, Amazon, etc. They don't even want the government taking a managerial role over the economy, let alone nationalizing private enterprise.
And I just want to point something out, okay, because this is a pretty interesting statistic, right? And this is something that America needs to be very wary of. As you look at those statistics they just showed about the percentage of people who actually understand what socialism means. And you can see as they go up in age group, they go up in the understanding of what socialism means. Which means, as you're going down through the list and you find people younger and younger, less and less people know what the word means. Okay? This is a very telling statistic, America. This is a very telling statistic of one very important thing. That is re-education of Americans. Alright? The reason that people are not understanding this thing anymore is because of what they are teaching and the way they are teaching it. Alright? And this is the way they teach our children and what they teach our children and how they teach it. Well, that helps shape our nation. Because everything that you learn that's going to base on who you are as you develop as an adult is being taught in these public education systems. And I just find it, I mean, I don't understand. Is this really the best the Democrats can do? I don't identify with either party. I'm just a normal, average American who votes for who I think the best person would be, even though more times than not, I don't think it'll matter too much. Okay, I'm like everybody else. I want the government to do what they do as long as it leaves us the hell alone and doesn't infringe on our rights and liberties. But I don't understand how the best that the Democratic Party can come up with is a man who wants socialism and a woman who has very little political experience, and the very little bit of political experience that she has been one colossal disaster after another. I mean, let's be honest. Yet, time and time again, Hillary Clinton's in the news being involved with something shady every single time. Let's go have a look at the most recent thing that's going on right here.
Breaking news, we've got another batch of Hillary Clinton's emails that are going to be released any moment now. But in the meantime, we have learned that some of those emails are so damaging, the ones that have already been out there, that they can't be released under any circumstance. Lee Carter and Brian Wright joins us now, back with the panel, Morgan and Ebony. Brian, let me go to you. I mean, it made sense that with the amount of work that the Secretary of State was involved in, she was using her private server, this was going to happen. Now that we're getting confirmation, now that the State Department is acknowledging as much, where do you think this goes from here?
Well, I'll tell you, first of all, the folks in Langley are going to be very, very upset and very angry. The folks who actually are out there collecting that information are going to be very upset. And I think secondarily, you're going to have a lot of folks, the informants out in the field, are going to be very anxious and very nervous because they want to know, is it my information? And that impacts our ability to get the job done. That is the CIA and the folks who are out working around the world nonstop to protect this country and keep it safe.
Brian, you were a CIA ops officer. In a circumstance like this, at some point, again, you may have to start to assume, we know it's 22 emails, but it's just from a sliver. Thousands are being combed through. We're going to get another dump any moment now. Could we actually see a scenario where they just have to start calling in operatives just out of an abundance of caution?
There's no doubt. There's no question that is a possibility. If the server was unclassified, and we're talking about classified information, unquestionably the Chinese and the Russians and others knew about that server, and they went after it hard. So there is going to be a damage assessment done. They're going to figure out which assets provided which pieces of information that were compromised. And those individuals that provided it, we're going to have to potentially have to take care of them, take them out of that country wherever we were meeting them at, and bring them wherever it may be to keep them safe. Same with officers such as myself, people who have gone out and done hard work and jobs around this country and around the globe. Their cover may be compromised from this. So absolutely, there will be a damage assessment done.
Wow. And we were talking here, guys, about General Petraeus. One slip. He's paid a heavy price for it. There's even scuttlebutt that there will be even further demotions even at this point. And yet Hillary has gotten away with exponentially a lot more than he has. Now, what was the official charge with General Petraeus?
Similar, Charles, in the sense that it was all under the Espionage Act, but we're talking about a difference in scope. And Brian's right. When you talk about what the broad range scope of what Hillary has potentially breached here, we still don't even know. That's what's astonishing. We still have, more and more emails. Right now we're talking about 22 that we know of to be potentially top secret. There's so much that we still don't know. Where at least with Petraeus, we knew the kind of limited range in which the scope of his breach was, and we saw what his, he was sentenced to jail and he had a probationary thing and whatnot. So I really think comparing the two, Charles, it seems a bit of a discrepancy, if you will.
The Secretary of State with a private server on a farm somewhere in upstate New York, everything potentially is on there, Morgan. Everything.
And there's still 8,000 pages left to go. Remember, this is only 1,000 pages of the 9,000 that has been gone through. Another 8,000 that we still don't know what is there. I have to say, whenever I read this story, I just sighed and I thought, does anybody really want 4 more years of this? I mean, if this is what it is today with the Clintons, tomorrow it will be something else. I mean, I don't see how even her own party can't be exhausted from the seemingly limitless amount of scandals in which comes out of this family.
Well, there's no doubt, Leah, that they're circling the wagons. Listen, there have been some overtures by Biden in the last couple of weeks. You study the political ramifications of things like this. You know how people feel when these things are out there. What do you think the public reaction probably will be to this?
Listen, I think she's had a death by 1,000 cuts. She's had a really tough few weeks. Bernie Sanders going after her for being in bed with Wall Street. She just had another Wall Street fundraiser this week. People are getting really, really frustrated with her. The Benghazi movie coming out. There's all these reminders of what people are telling me when they talk about her. Is like, I want to like her, but I'm not sure I can trust her. Now there's just one more reason, and this is a big reason, because it's not just the Republicans coming out and saying that she did this. This is the State Department coming out and saying it. And that has a lot of weight. So
but you've already seen evidence, though, that this is already, even without the revelations that we've had today, and probably after this next dump is in a couple of minutes from now, you've already seen evidence that this has taken a toll on her efforts to get into the White House.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're just seeing a gradual decline in her numbers over the last few weeks.
Wow. All right, guys, let's keep it right there.
So, yeah, I actually forgot about that. Yeah, keep in mind, America, that sometime in the next couple of weeks, that Benghazi movie is coming out. Right? And some of y'all who aren't aware, and some of y'all who are currently Hillary supporters, may end up having to come to the realization that her innocence in this Benghazi situation is just not true. And I find it interesting that slowly but surely that her numbers seem to be declining. Now, it almost seems to me like this is almost a reversed situation of the last election, doesn't it? I mean, we had a pretty weak field on the Republican side last year. The only guy who was gaining any support, really, was Mitt Romney, and I think most of us all knew that he wasn't going to make it in. I think everybody hoped, but there just wasn't anybody there. Now, you've actually got a pretty strong field of Republicans this year. You got Rubio, you got Cruz, you got Carson, and then you just got Trump coming out of nowhere and just destroying everything. And that's just the top four. There's some other guys in there that were getting some votes too. Cash and Christie and, you know, a lot of people up there. And it just seems interesting how last year it seemed like, and this may have been his downfall, like the only really good candidate that we had was a Mormon. I'm not saying you have to be Christian to run, but I think that definitely hurt him. And it's like this time, the best two candidates we have on the Democratic side is a socialist and potential criminal. As far as I'm concerned, I think she should be in jail already. I think the fact that she's even running for president and people aren't actually looking into what she's doing. Look at this report right here. All right? They're going through 20, 30,000 pages, it sounds like, of this stuff on her personal private server. Even if some of this stuff was not deemed classified material at the time, when you're in the business of politics, I think you can probably have a pretty good eye for stuff that probably will be deemed top secret at some point. I would think. Because if you don't, and if you can identify these things, is this really a position that you're capable of handling? If you can't tell the difference from stuff that should be top secret and stuff that should not be top secret, is that really somebody that you guys want as president? Because even if a lot of these things that are very damaging were not top secret at the time, you would think that somebody who was going to be president of the United States would have the intelligence to do so. Once again, I have no political allegiance. I don't sit around and try to bash Hillary just to bash Hillary because I'm some kind of hater. I'm looking at the facts and it doesn't make sense to me. Now, now they're talking about that there's operatives, all right? Because let's be honest, it's not just the CIA. Every major country has spies all over the world. Whether you like it or not, agree with it or not, that's the way governments operate. And now, not only has she cost the lives of Americans in Benghazi, but we may have agents all over the world whose cover and lives may very well be in danger because this woman was careless enough to do all this business on her personal server. Alright? So we potentially are looking at more American losses of life, some that may have already occurred that we're not even aware of because they're deemed top secret. Let's keep that in mind, because there's a good chance that we have operatives out there that have already died that we don't even know about because they're so classified, we're not even supposed to know about them. That's just the reality of the government, folks. This isn't some conspiracy theory. I mean, this is how some of these agencies operate. And I'm certainly guessing, even if there hasn't been a loss of life, or even if there has, there's a very good chance that there's been a great deal of loss of intelligence because of the situations that this woman has compromised throughout the globe. And this is somebody who people are going out in droves and voting for. And I'm sorry, that does not make sense to me. Now, let's go to my final and closing point here, which is a question that I'm going to propose to America. Let's go look at this. And there it is. With all these scandals surrounding Hillary Clinton and all this illegal activity, it seems to me that it's more than plausible that at some point in the very near future here, maybe Hillary Clinton could get arrested for possibly espionage, or what's that other word I'm looking for here? Come on, guys, help me out. My mind's going blank. What's it called when you're a traitor against your own nation? It's like mutiny, but something else. Yeah, it's early. I need more coffee, but yeah, that's the word that I'm looking for. What if she gets charged with some of that stuff? Right? What happens then? I mean, look, I mean, this, you can say whatever you want about Hillary, and you can say whatever you want about Obama, but the simple fact is that this nation has been completely reshaped over the past decade, primarily since Obama came in office. Whether you like it or not, that's just a fact. Even in just the past, I would say, not even 8 years so much, but as the past 2 years, this is a completely different nation than it was 2 years ago. And I never thought that I would see a time when the best candidates for the Democratic side would be a woman who should very possibly be in jail or may end up in jail, and a socialist. I mean, don't we already have socialist countries? Do we really need another one? Haven't we seen how that's worked out for other people? And our country has gone so far away from the Constitution. They've committed so many unconstitutional acts that I can actually imagine a scenario in which I'm about to discuss with you. And this is my question. And keep in mind, this is about Hillary and Trump. I'll get to Trump in a minute here. But this is my question. What happens if Hillary gets arrested? I actually don't know. I'm just a normal American citizen. I'm not some professor on politics or anything like that. But what happens if she gets arrested? I'm actually wondering. Will her delegates automatically go to Bernie Sanders? Will they be required to have another election for the Democratic side to elect a new candidate? Or will she, in fact, be able to keep her delegates and continue to run for the presidency from jail? And I'm sure a lot of you are laughing at me right now. But let's look at the facts. There's a lot of apathy in this country. It's apparent there's a lot of apathy in this country. Nobody really cares about what's going on in this country. We talk about it all the time, and as long as you got your iPhones, right, or you can go check out your stories where Deadmau5 is trolling Kanye because he can't afford recording software. You know, as long as you get your little stories like that, it's all good. Everything else doesn't matter, right? And I'm actually wondering if that's even possible. Is it actually possible that while Hillary's arrested and undergoing trial that she can continue to run for president? Because I've seen the reshaping of a nation. Where I believe that they've actually re-educated enough people and brainwashed enough people with Common Core mass media where I could actually foresee a situation where this could happen. And I'm wondering if this is possible. Because I actually believe in this country, there's enough people out there, apparently, who are voting for, that don't seem to mind that this woman is a criminal. So, I don't know. This is a very strange thing. But let's go over here and let's check out this story that I caught about Donald Trump today, because it's something very interesting to consider. Let's go have a look.
And Paul Ryan and other people in Washington need to recognize the reason that Trump is winning is because they feel like people in Washington have helped them lose, and they're sick of it. They've worked hard to get him elected, and when they get there, they don't do anything different, and I'll tell you why. 3 words: follow the money. The donor class runs the political environment of this country, and people are waking up to that, and they are tired of it. And that's what this election is largely about. It's an overthrow of the government, and you know what we ought to be? Glad that it is a peaceful revolution with ballots rather than one with bullets. And we're having, in many ways, somewhat of a political revolution in the Republican Party and in the country.
Hey, Governor, you've already...
So you heard that. Even the mainstream media, who likes to spin all sorts of stuff, and don't get me wrong, I think Fox has some of their own agendas just like anybody else. Okay? But you got a former presidential candidate right there touching on a very important topic. That there's people in America are sick and tired of Washington saying they're going to do all this stuff and then just basically go in and do the opposite or don't do any of it. They're tired of all these politicians that are bought and paid for by various groups. We've gotten so accustomed in America to hearing about fundraisers. We lose sight of the fact that these fundraisers are merely down payments on favors they're going to get later. This is a rent-to-own plan. They are giving a lot of these people that are giving these big chunks of money are giving this money to them in order to get these people to pass legislation that's going to favor them financially. Simple as that. They are bought and paid for just like if you were to go buy a cheeseburger at McDonald's. And that's what kind of makes Donald Trump so exceptional. He's not bought and paid for. He has his own money. We kind of saw this movement start years ago with Ross Perot. And he had his own money. But let's be honest, he didn't have nearly the captivating personality that Donald Trump did. And a lot of people that weren't aware maybe are starting to become aware that there is definitely there's a political revolution, or just a revolution in general, going on in this country. Jesus said, I didn't come here to bring everyone together. I came here to divide. Right? And right now, there's never been a time, with the exception of possibly over the issue of slavery, which, let's be honest, if you do the research, the actual war that ended slavery wasn't even about slavery. Should it have been? Probably. But it wasn't. But aside from that, I don't think we've ever been so divided in this country. And it kind of seems to me that there's only really one thing that really separates anybody that really matters. It seems to me that people voting for Trump are people who believe in the Constitution. It seems to me that people voting for Hillary don't care about the Constitution, think it's an outdated document that doesn't mean anything, even though it's considered the greatest political document ever written, the greatest document of governance ever written. Trump's got some pretty crazy ideas, doesn't he? He wants to build a wall around America to keep out illegal aliens. A wall. And this is a pretty crazy idea, but I think most people feel pretty confident that if he gets in office, he's actually going to do it. And it'd be nice for once, even if it is something like that that's so big, that if somebody actually got into the White House and actually did something they said they were going to do. Because that's the thing that I think that resonates for people who are getting in the Trump camp, right? He says what's on his mind. Sometimes it's some pretty good and sound information, and sometimes he's calling some women disgusting and saying this is wild things you wouldn't expect to hear from a candidate. Repeating his supporter. Calling Ted Cruz names, which I won't repeat. Right? None of us ever thought we would see this stuff before, but it's really happening. But the simple fact, all BS aside, right, is he's not bought and paid for. And people in America are tired of these politicians that are not bought and paid for. Or we're tired of the ones that are bought and paid for, I'm sorry. But this is a pretty interesting situation, you know. But it does seem to me that is very clear. And that this may very well be the most important presidential election this nation has ever had. I think there's a lot of things that Trump is in favor of that are not good things. We all know that he wants to increase the police state a lot. And I'm definitely not for that. Does something need to be done about immigration? Most certainly. Every single day I turn on the TV and find out that they're taking more people off of the border. I don't know how many times I've had to go and do videos showing how the government is taking the planes that are supposed to be protecting our borders and using them to spy on American citizens. This is a problem. Even with the Mexican immigrants coming in aside, and don't forget, we still have to worry about the cartels. We still have to worry about this ISIS thing. And it seems like everybody in the world seems interested in getting rid of ISIS, except America. If you do any research. Donald Trump has actually come out and told you that some of these leaders, like Gaddafi and Saddam Hussein, that we took out of power, they were bad men. They were very bad men. But the simple fact is, they kept even worse men in line. Sometimes these terrorists gotta know that you're willing to do much worse than they are to keep them under control. And unfortunately, after we remove these men from power, you can see the situations in these countries just got much, much worse. And it was all because we decided to get involved. And it's just interesting some of the stuff that he points out, because this is stuff that you can actually look at objectively without an affiliation or allegiance to any particular party or candidate and go, you know what? He's got a pretty good point. So, I don't know what's going to happen. I'm actually terrified that he might not win. I really am. I'm actually terrified that he might win. He's a loose cannon. We all know it. There's no way to know for sure what the hell he's going to do when he gets in there. I don't know. It's pretty interesting, isn't it? So, yeah, I all I can say is this, is it's definitely looking like it's going to be a Trump-Hillary thing. Then, of course, Hillary may end up getting arrested, although I doubt it, but it could happen. And then it could get even crazier. So let's keep paying attention to this, but if this does turn out to be a Trump-Hillary election, I want you to really think about what's going on and decide which direction you want this nation heading in. Because, I don't know. We're in bad shape, folks. We're in real bad shape, and somebody's got to do something. And we're all divided, and you've got to pick a side. You know, that's just the reality. There's no staying out of it anymore. I wish that wasn't the case, but it is. We're divided 50-50, it seems like. Hopefully that number is starting to change. But, you either believe in what's right, or you don't. And, that's just the way I see it. You know. So, anyways, I guess that's all I'm going to say, y'all. I really don't know where I'm going to end this thing at, but that's just something I wanted to just talk about the candidates and what's going on with them and just give y'all something interesting to think about. So, hopefully you guys found this interesting and you'll give me lots of comments and let me know what you think. But that's it. I will talk to you guys again soon. Thanks for watching, and you guys take care. Thought I'd end this thing. Remind y'all of a very famous speech by George Carlin. It's never going to get any better. Don't look for it. Be happy with what you've got. Because the owners of this country don't want that. I'm talking about the real owners now, the big owners, the wealthy, the real owners, the big wealthy interests that control things and make all the important decisions. Forget the politicians. They are irrelevant. The politicians are put there to give the idea that you have freedom of choice. You don't. You have no choice. You have owners. They own you. They own everything. They own all the important land. They own and control the corporations. They've long since bought and paid for the Senate, the Congress, the state houses, the city halls, and they got the judges in their back pockets, and they own all the big media companies, so they can control just about all of the news and information you get to hear. They got you by the balls. They spend billions of dollars every year lobbying to get what they want. Well, we know what they want. They want more for themselves and less for everybody else. But I'll tell you what they don't want. They don't want a population of citizens capable of critical thinking. They don't want well-informed, well-educated people capable of critical thinking. They're not interested in that. That doesn't help them. That's against their interest. That's right. They don't want people who are smart enough to sit around a kitchen table and think about how badly they're getting fucked by a system that threw them overboard 30 fucking years ago. They don't want that. You know what they want? They want obedient workers. Obedient workers. People who are just smart enough to run the machines and do the paperwork, and just dumb enough to passively accept all these increasingly shitty jobs with the lower pay, the longer hours, the reduced benefits, the lack of overtime, and vanishing pension that disappears the minute you go to collect it. And now they're coming for your Social Security money. They want your retirement money. They want it back so they can give it to their criminal friends on Wall Street. And you know something? They'll get it. They'll get it all from you sooner or later. Because they own this fucking place. It's a big club, and you ain't in it. You and I are not in the big club. By the way, it's the same big club they used to beat you over the head with all day long when they tell you what to believe. All day long beating you over the head with their media telling you what to believe, what to think, and what to buy. The table is tilted, folks. The game is rigged and nobody seems to notice. Nobody seems to care. Good, honest, hard-working people, white collar, blue collar, it doesn't matter what color shirt you have on, good, honest, hard-working people continue. These are people of modest means, continue to elect rich cocksuckers who don't give a fuck about you. They don't give a fuck about you. They don't give a fuck about you. They don't care about you at all. And nobody seems to notice. Nobody seems to care. That's what the owners count on. The fact that Americans will probably remain willfully ignorant of the big red, white, and blue dick that's being jammed up their assholes every day because the owners of the country know the truth. It's called the American dream. Because you have to be asleep to believe in it.